This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I am the host on our podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. Guys, we're going to keep on this amazing journey that we are on. We love America. Y'all know I love America. And on here, we're going to keep talking about who, what, when, where, how, and why. We have our flag behind us that represents our nation, our presidential seal that represents the executive office of our nation, our president. We're praying for our president, the president's family, the cabinet, the executive cabinet, their families. We want our nation to do well, and we want our leadership to do well. We're going to continue to pray for our citizens in our nation. I really have always had a focus for the last 2 years when I found out that there were 265,900,000 working Americans living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet in 2024. Those numbers are changing, and we're believing they're going to continue to change. Oh, yes, we're going to believe that they're going to continue to change. So we're going to move forward because we got a lot to dissect in 2026, so we got a lot to cover tonight. And so I wanted to dive right in. Now, like I said, there's some shifting that's going on in our nation. We've got an election in 2026, and the country is going in a totally different direction than it was in 2024. So people are speaking loud and clear, and there's a lot on the line. And we have leadership that's under pressure. 2026 is going to be a very telling year. Now, tonight, we're going to examine something that generates a lot of discussion in our nation. History in context. Context is very important. All this ties in with our clinical perspectives, listening to understand. Now, this is going to be a little different. This is going to be a little heavy for some people. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a little heavy. I ask you to hang in there now because I got really confronted. Just stick with me. I'm going to frame this. I was recently confronted in a very direct manner regarding what someone perceived as me not telling both sides of the story. That's what you say. You don't tell both sides of the story. You get on social media and then you just present one side. I was like, what do you mean, boy? It got kind of heated, but I listened. I said, well, wait a minute. I need to hear what they're saying because this is someone that I respect and love. I was told that I'm too quick to say that many Black Americans are enthralled with the idolatry of race. Oh, and that is a term that I use frequently. I talk about the Black collective pathology, which formulates the idolatry of race. Stick with me. We're going somewhere, and it's expecting us when we get there. So we discussed that this definitely is an undeniable pattern where everything is driven by race for some people. That I've just observed it. Where everything is seen through the eyes of race. I used to be one that did it. So what am I basing that on? What people actually say, such as, well, they did that because I'm Black, or they did that to us because we're Black. Guys, I heard that growing up all the time, and I still hear it today. So the challenge given to me was this. Was there anything in our nation that was driven by the fact that certain things happened because someone was indeed a Black American? Anyone who knows me or follows me on social media knows that I often refer to the need for all of us to be intellectually honest. So from that perspective, I told the person who was challenging me that I would present their full perspective with historical facts that propose that there are things in our historical trajectory that were indeed based upon and driven by the race of a person. Now, is that thought-provoking or what? We're talking about history accurately told. Moreover, I was not only interested in honestly examining that, but I wanted to honestly see how it could possibly affect how we as Americans may think, feel, or act today in 2026. God has been dealing with me about the specifics of who, what, when, where, how, and why regarding any issue in the pursuit of the whole truth of any matter. From that perspective, let's dive into what was presented to me from this person who I deeply love and respect. Here goes. This is what I was told. Now, I urge you to listen with an open and objective mindset. I challenge you to embrace the concept of our clinical perspective, which is listening to understand. And that's what I had to do with them. I bucked up. We were going at it. It got intense. But it was like, Janice, pull back and listen to understand. Here goes. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Over the past few months, I've heard a word many times. This is what this person shared with me. And I said, okay, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to embrace this. And I'm just going to share their heart. And they were saying that over the past few months, they had heard the word many times. And the word is context. C-O-N-T-E-X-T. Context. I've also heard many conversations about a specific group of people. Others can talk about us all they want, but if we talk about ourselves, then there's an issue. Well, there's some context. In other words, this person was telling me, said, other people can talk about Black Americans, but if we talk about ourselves and our own experience, people have a problem with it. Boy, did we camp out there for a while. And we went toe to toe. It was good. But I walked away so enriched. Now, this is from this person's perspective. This is their perspective. And then I'm framing this. And they said, most people know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. Almost nobody knows there were around 120 Black communities destroyed between Reconstruction after the Civil War and the mid-1960s. 120 Black communities were completely obliterated, destroyed. These towns contain 8,000 to 12,000 Black-owned businesses, grocery stores, hotels, tailors, barbers, banks, doctors, newspapers, funeral homes, mechanics, farms, schools, churches, a full infrastructure of economic independence. When those communities were burned, drowned by government-made lakes, annexed, seized, or bulldozed, America didn't just destroy buildings. It destroyed generational wealth, stability, identity, safety, and the cultural patterns that make generational success possible. When I say Black, this is a person talking to me, and he said, when I say Black, I'm specifically speaking about American descendants of slaves, of which I, Janice Pons, am one. My great-grandmother was born a slave. Daddy was a sharecropper. I grew up in Jim Crow. It was rough. So let's do the math, they said to me. Let's do the math. This was a good interaction. I was very challenged. Let's do the math. If even 25 to 50% of those 12,000 businesses had survived, in today's value, the initial wealth would convert to $1.5 billion up to $3 billion. Now, let's compound that over a period of 100 years, because a lot of these dynamics of burning down of all these 120 communities, including Tulsa. It happened here in Tulsa. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It happened in 1921, and a lot of them got burned down during that period of time. In 1919, 1920, 1921, and during that period of time, the 1920s. So here we are, over 100 years later, 100 years later. So if we compound the value by 100 years at 3%, this is how much was lost in those 120 communities, in those communities that were burned down. $8 to $16 billion, 3% compounding for 100 years. 5% compounding, 188 to $377 billion lost. 7%, 1.1 up to $2.2 trillion lost. And if we compounded it by 10%, it was 20 to $40 trillion lost. This is the actual math behind the destruction. Initial wealth destroyed, initially 1.5 billion up to 3 billion, but over 100 years, 3%, 8 to 16 billion, 100 years, 5%, 188 up to 377 billion, 100 years at 7%, compounded, 1.1 up to 2.2 trillion, and 100 years at 10% compounding, 20 to $40 trillion lost in one racial group of people and their economic influence based on the businesses that they had. The part people ignore, I was told, is that Black Americans already did everything people say that we should do today. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just work hard. He said, we already did it. Before Jim Crow, before the massacres, before redlining, before highways cut Black neighborhoods apart, Black Americans had, this is what had already happened, higher marriage rates than white Americans, extremely low out-of-wedlock birth rates, high two-parent household rates. I'm going to say this before, I don't remember this very well, before the Great Society put in place by President Johnson, 82% of Black homes in America had a man and woman in the home. After the Great Society was put in place and welfare state was just brought in and women could not get any help if there was a man in the home. So what did that foster? What did that set up? And it became a policy of the Democratic Party. To get help, you had to be a single woman. And you got more money the more babies you had. So now approximately 70% of Black babies are born to single moms. Guys, it's just the truth. So back then, it was the high rate, 82% of two-parent household, a man and a woman in the household, Black families in America. Fastest growing, and that was in the 60s. That was in the midst of Jim Crow that I grew up with. That was just how it was. Fastest growing middle class in America. Soaring business creation. Black business ownership tripled between emancipation and 1910. Go back and look at video clips of Black Wall Street here in Tulsa. Low crime rates in the communities. Well, here in Tulsa, you couldn't go to South Tulsa and shop. You only went over there to work. So everything was centralized right there in the Greenwood district. High church involvement and community engagement. It was just a part of the culture. High in entrepreneurship. The rates were higher than most white immigrant groups at the time. Black America already proved that strong family values, hard work, education, and entrepreneurship were not the problem. Stick with me, we're going somewhere, and it's expecting us when we get here. This is the perspective. This was the truth that was laid out to me, and I told them in all fairness I was going to present this, and then we're going to frame this whole thing around where we're going with this. Those strengths were punished, not rewarded. Here's a very important question. What did this teach the country and immigrants who were coming in? This is what it taught the country and immigrants, I was told. When new immigrants arrived in America, Irish, Italian, Jewish, Polish, German, etc., they saw the same thing the nation saw. Black economic success, racial violence, legal barriers, and destruction. They saw that the rules were different for black success. They saw that a black man owning a store could be killed for just owning it. They saw that a black town could be burned and no one would be punished. That's just the history of what actually occurred in America. They saw that being black meant your wealth, your land, your home, your savings, and business were never secure. And I remember when the thrust started happening where you got your own savings and loan. They had their own bank. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, we're going to get our own bank. We couldn't get money at the other banks. This is true. I remember that. And black people learned it too. They learned all these things. The message America sent was clear. Black excellence will be met with force. Black prosperity will be erased. Black stability will be undermined. Black achievement will be punished. And that message echoed across generations. Remember, we're listening for understanding. I was challenged with this being presented to me. It was an intense interaction. Now, here's the common argument. Well, that was a long time ago. Generational wealth is time. Wealth grows through decades of compounding. If your great-grandparents own land or business, you benefit today. If your great-grandparents had theirs destroyed, you pay the price today. The common argument, another one is, well, everyone had it rough. Why y'all belly aching? Everybody had it rough. Other groups face hardship, but not racial pogroms, which is an organized massacre of a particular ethnic group or religious group. Organized massacre. Mass burnings. Public lynchings for economic competition. Redlining. What's redlining? It's the discriminatory practice of denying services such as mortgages, insurance, and loans to people based on the racial or ethnic composition of the neighborhood that they live in, rather than their personal financial situation. This illegal practice originated from government-created maps in the 1930s that outlined what was called hazardous areas, often predominantly minority neighborhoods, with a red line, and continues to have lasting and negative effects today. This has been proven and it's been acted out. Someone wants to sell a house. It's a black couple that owns the house. They have African-American, so to speak, African-American artwork. Someone comes in to look at the house. The price of the house could be at $300,000. They look, they say, oh, it's black owned. Look at the black art, so forth and so on. The same house shown again by someone who was white. This has been an experiment that's been done in this country. Taking down the African-American artwork, same house was sold for $450,000. That's a true story. We're just talking, we're thinking out loud. I was challenged with this. FHA exclusion, Federal Housing Administration, you couldn't even participate in it. There was a time in America where you could not. The GI Bill exclusion, I've heard people say, well, President Trump did all that. Back then, all of it was done like that in America. When his dad had real estate, they said, well, Trump did that, Trump did that. All the property was like that in America. And he did something about it different. As it evolved, he said, wait a minute. And he, to the point in New York where he had Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, having him coming in, speaking. He made sure, I think it was 25% of contracts, that black folk got those contracts when he was building up New York. That's true. So he didn't get called racist until he ran for president. He was all over everywhere with people getting awards from black people, the NAACP, so forth and so on. I digress. The GI Bill exclusion, black soldiers were not included in that. Urban renewal, bulldozers happening, minority black communities. Highways through business districts that happen in Greenwood here in Tulsa. Systemic loan denials. We had to get our own banks. State-approved terrorism. The KKK, I saw them coming through the neighborhood. I saw all of that stuff. I lived that stuff. I was traumatized with that stuff. Hardship is not the same as state-tolerated destruction of wealth. Think about it. Do you understand the difference? We're talking about listening to understand. Now, here's another common argument. They took me to task, and I said, I'll share it because it's historical truth, guys. This is historical truth. Here's another common argument. Name one law holding black people back today. People say, well, black people not being held back today. Name one law that's holding black people back today. Well, here's the truth. You don't need a law today if you erased the wealth then. Wealth, or the lack of it, reproduces itself. That makes sense. But if you want laws, consider this. Then let's look at the laws. There was something called the Homestead Acts. 270 million acres to white families was given. Homestead Act. Less than 0.5% went to black families. The Homestead Act of 1862 was a landmark U.S. law that encouraged westward expansion by offering 160 acres of public land to adult citizens or extended citizens for a small filing fee, requiring them to live on, cultivate, and improve the land for 5 years to gain full ownership. And I had a little older white friend that I met, loved her, fell in love with her. She told me her family was Wells, and they were given the word that if you come to Tennessee and chop down the trees on this 60 acres, you could, and farm it and develop it, is yours. And we never got our 40 acres. And we were supposed, after slavery, get 40 acres and a mule. And we started off, and the Democratic Party, once they took over after they assassinated Lincoln, they reneged on the whole thing. True story. Listen, so this Homestead Act, my little lady I met from Wells, they came here, Tennessee, that's how they got here. Cut it down. She was in her 90s when she was telling me this. Cut it down. That was their land. 40 acres. Cut it down. Cut down the trees. It's your land. History accurately told. So let's finish talking about this Homestead Act. For a small filing fee, requiring them to live on, cultivate, and improve the land for 5 years to gain full ownership. That's how it was set up. It was signed by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. It made land ownership accessible to diverse groups like immigrants, women, and formerly enslaved people, ultimately distributing wealth to them through millions of acres as you move westward and transforming the American landscape. Though it also displaced who? Native Americans. Remember, we're listening to understand. If you haven't seen the movie Sarah's Oil, look at it. She became a little black girl who was also Creek, got 160 acres, and God told her it was full of oil. She became a millionaire at 11 years old. That's a movie worth. It really did a number on me, though. It triggered me because I remember being 8, 9, 10, 11, and all the things I saw and just what I ended up experiencing. And it's all centered around this right here. It really was. And I came out of it, but this is a backdrop that I was challenged on. So stick with me. We're going to finish this out. Then there was redlining that happened, FHA, redlining that happened between 1934 and 1968. Legally denied home loans to black neighborhoods, discriminatory practice of denying services such as mortgages, insurance, and loans to people based on the racial or ethnic composition of the neighborhood they lived in rather than their personal financial situation. Then there was the GI Bill. That was a law. There was discrimination there. Black veterans were just excluded. They didn't get the benefits of a GI Bill. Then there was urban renewal. Governments bulldozed black business districts right here in Tulsa. They did it. Racial covenants where black families were barred from what was considered appreciating neighborhoods. You couldn't live in the white neighborhood. It's how it was, guys. It was a covenant. This was for white people only. This is the truth of what went on in our nation. Now, these laws didn't just hurt feelings. They shaped who owns America today. Now, things have changed. Discriminatory laws have changed. But we're talking about generational wealth that was burned to the ground. Remember, we're listening to understand. And here's the bottom line. Where are we going with this? And this is what I was told. Black people didn't fail. Black culture didn't fail, not back then. Black families didn't fail, not back then. The country, this is what I was told, the country failed black people repeatedly, precisely when they were succeeding. Now, historically, based upon those things that was done, is it true or false? Based on what happened back then. Don't go but. We're talking about listening to understand. Look at what was just laid out. There was nothing that I just said. It's just the truth. So, there and here, as of late, so many other dynamics that have been added on to it that cause people to stay in a perpetual cycle of being stuck. Stick with me. Really, when you look at it, black Americans did everything right. But then the lynchings happened and the burning down of businesses and the burning down of 120 communities and the laws that were against us and so forth and so on. They built towns, families, businesses, wealth, and strong communities. And for 150 years, America responded with fire, bombs, lynch mobs, land theft, and federal policies that erase the very wealth other groups were allowed to build. The question isn't what holds black people back today. This is what I was told. It was intense, guys. It said, look, they looked at me and said, the question isn't what's holding black people back today. The real question is, how far ahead would black America be if the wealth of 120 thriving black communities and tens of thousands of families had never been violently erased? I just looked at them and I said, well, how much further along would it be? So even the most conservative math says the loss is easily $200 billion up to $2 trillion in generational wealth. That's not culture. That's cause and effect. Black Americans have invested so much into America. Have you ever heard this question? Well, why don't you guys just go back to Africa? I don't want to go back to Africa. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. My ancestors originally from the Congo don't want to go back. Well, people don't easily walk away from things that they have deeply invested in. History simply is. It doesn't care about someone's feelings. We are to understand it and learn from it. So history equals context, and context equals understanding. So there we have it. I openly presented a factual perspective. I told them I would on my platform because it's not a lie. That was history accurately told in an honest attempt to be balanced in presenting history in context. More importantly, presenting history in an effort to truly understand. I did what I told you I'd do. You're listening. My precious person that I love and respect deeply. I made a commitment to endeavor to present both sides as I move forward. And I said, you know, God, and the who, what, when, where, how, why. I really want to present both sides. Guys, about the political thing, to me, it's past Democrat, Republican. It's about America. And so, you know, I'm telling you what, though, if we keep going with these agendas that the Democrats have pushed, we're not going to have a country. So what promotes America? What promotes the protection of our children? What promotes the prosperity of our children? Trump accounts. Yes. And I'm coming for the men. I'm coming for you to educate you, to encourage you. What you going to do with that? You going to leave that money on the table? I made a commitment to endeavor to present both sides as I move forward. Understanding history and the implications on the present, and to embrace what we all need. We need the Lord. We need God who will impact our future for good. And whether or not we produce good or rotten fruit in our lives, all this provokes so much thought for me as this podcast has been named From Destruction to Dignity. All that stuff was destructive, but we can get to a point of dignity, and we have come a long way. Clinical perspective, spiritual truths. There was a lot that we have said I just laid out a lot. It's just the truth. And it may have stirred up a lot of emotions for some people. Some people may have turned it off, but it doesn't change the truth. Yet I want us to always be encouraged to listen, to understand. Let's just touch upon that briefly for our clinical perspective. When we listen to understand, it's a form of active listening that involves fully concentrating on the speaker and grasping their perspective. I was really challenged to do that when this person was hitting me hard with this stuff, meaning that we're not waiting on the opportunity to respond or reply. Like, I got to jump in and say this. Active listening is simply listening to understand. This form of listening conveys a mutual understanding between the speaker and the listener. Speakers receive confirmation. Their point is coming across, and listeners absorb more content and understanding by being consciously engaged. And I fixed myself to do that with this person. I must admit that I got challenged when listening to what this person was sharing with me initially. Yet I purposed to calm down and to listen for understanding. Key practices include paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues, asking clarifying questions, and reflecting back what you hear to ensure you've understood correctly. This approach strengthens relationships and builds trust, and making the other person feel genuinely heard and valued. They felt that way. Because I said, I'm going to present this. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to put it out there because it's the truth. And I'm going to encourage us towards doing this. Doing it. Listen to understand. I propose, I looked at them. I said, listen, I purpose to give my full attention. And I said, listen, I'm going to put away distractions. I want to get this. I want to tell the truth. Because if we listen to understand, might we walk away with a stronger bond and a stronger relationship. Listen, guys, what have we looked at tonight? What have we looked at tonight? History and context, and listening to understand. Guys, there's a lot that we have ignored, but it helps us to understand where people are coming from. And I'm telling you, and I've had white people to come to me and say, well, gosh, I don't know how to approach people. I want to, reach out. I said, take somebody out to coffee. Just sit down and just go out to coffee and just hear where they're coming from and just say, how you doing? And not necessarily go over all the history, but just to say, listen, I want you to know that you mean something to me. And I appreciate your time. Take somebody out to coffee. Go out to breakfast. Go to church together. Go out to the gathering place together. We got a place here in Tulsa. If you ever come to Tulsa, go to the gathering place. It's beautiful. And it was built as a place of reconciliation because of what happened here in 1921. And a philanthropist who has a lot of money, multi, probably billionaire, They built that place. It cost millions, multiple millions of dollars, and it is beautiful. If you ever come to Tulsa, I'll go over there with you, the gathering place. Guys, we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can't undo this history, but we can acknowledge that, yes, it did happen. Can we change it? No. Can we affect the future? Yes. Can we unite as one? Yes. As we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, we're going to keep dissecting things. Guys, I encourage us to unite as one. We're going to stand together or perish as fools. I'm about to standing together, and my focus is on our children. Guys, let's keep coming back because we got a lot that we're going to unpack as we move forward. But I want to encourage us. Let's listen to each other to understand. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.